Kita akan bermula dalam 5 minit lagi ya. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya rasa kita boleh bermula sekarang. Pertama sekali saya ingin mengucapkan selamat datang kepada uh, tetamu-tetamu kita pada hari ini dan juga terutama sekali kepada Dr. Rohaya selaku pembentang kita pada hari ini. Tajuk webinar kita pada hari ini adalah Incorporating E-book Production as Assessment for and of Learning. Jadi dalam webinar ini Dr. Rohaya akan bercerita sedikit tentang penggunaan kreatif pedagogi dalam assessment lah, terutama sekali dalam konteks assignment students. Jadi sebelum kita bermula lebih lanjut, saya perkenalkan sedikit. Dr. Rohaya merupakan pensyarah TESOL dari PPIP USM dan beliau juga sebenarnya telah menerbitkan sendiri beberapa e-buku kanak-kanak di India USM, boleh didapati di India USM lah, dan beliau aktif menulis dalam konteks yang beginilah, dan beliau juga turut terlibat dalam tempoh hari kami ada lakukan program itself untuk melatih beberapa pelajar lah sebagai penulis dan facilitator suatu terbit. Jadi sedikit peringatan, webinar ini akan berlangsung selama 1 jam daripada pukul 10 pagi sehingga 11 pagi. Dan jika anda ada sebarang soalan, anda boleh type di chat mulakan dengan Q. Anda perlu menghadiri webinar ini secara sepenuhnya untuk melayakkan anda untuk mendapat mata SPD. Dan kami akan memberikan link dan QR code untuk di-scan di akhir webinar inilah. Jadi tanpa melengahkan masa, saya persilakan Dr. Rohaya untuk menyampaikan pembentangannya.
Baik, terima kasih Cik Razan. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan selamat pagi, good morning. Saya izinkan saya untuk menyampaikan my sharing session ni dalam bahasa Inggeris kerana ada student saya dari China. Boleh ya Cik Razan?
Boleh, tak ada masalah.
Okay. Boleh nampak ya?
Boleh.
Okay. Saya punya voice dengar terang, jelas ke Cik Razan?
Untuk saya jelas. Kalau ada yang ni boleh komen lah. Kalau ada yang
Okay.
tak jelas atau apa. Baik.
Alright, terima kasih. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum again and good morning. My name is Rohaya from PPIP. So today is rather a sharing session rather than a talk because I think most of you have done this before assessment for and off learning. So this is actually my course that I held that last semester. In which I had my students to produce an ebook for in the US at USM. So I asked them to upload their books on Indie at USM. It's a very dynamic platform. I would say that CDAE, kudos to CDAE for having that platform for us, especially those who feel that they want to be authors, they want to write something, but they do not have a platform to do so. It's free, okay, so you can just upload on Indie. And that's a little bit about Indie at USM. Okay, so these are the aspects that I am going to cover today in this 1 hour. The first one is the type of assessment. The second one, the actual assignment that I gave my students and the process that we went through and the product that was produced at the end. And I'm also going to share a little bit on my CO attainment, some reflections, and also what I've learned from this experience. Okay. I would rather this be a sembang santai, kind of thing. You can always interact with me if possible. Boleh buka mic and interact orally because when it appears on the chat, I will not be able to see it when I'm presenting. Okay. All right. The first type of assessment is for learning. This one. This is the emphasis of my course. I go for learning. Assessment for learning is to assess the student's comprehension and understanding of a skill or lesson during the learning and teaching process. Normally, schools in Malaysia or international schools, the emphasis is on off learning, the other type of assessment. But for my course and for the rest of my courses, I emphasize on the for learning process because I feel that this is a very important process for the students to not only assess the students' comprehension and understanding, but rather to enhance their understanding, the skill, in this case, the writing skill, the students' writing skill. So during the process, I could see how much they can apply the knowledge that I have delivered. And after that, we can enhance that knowledge using the ZPD or ZPD, Vygotsky's theory, right? So that's where I exercise the peer and teacher feedback. When during the process, they will be given, the students, the authors will be given, first of all, feedback from their peers, and then after that, my feedback will come in. So this I would recommend to everyone who has not done so, who have not tried out. You will see tremendous results rather than just giving them the assessment and collecting the assessment at the end of the semester. So this assessment for learning is a part of the assessment of the whole assignment. It's a part, I did give them some grades, you see, in terms of seeing the progress, seeing how they cooperate, they collaborate in the learning process. Okay, so that is the type of assessment, first type of assessment for learning. So this is the second type of assessment that we normally do. All right, the assessment is typically administered at the end of a unit or grading period and evaluate a student's understanding. So for this assessment, of course, the assessment was for the product when everything is complete. So I evaluated the whole product, everything from the cover page until the end of the story. So this is the type of assessment of learning. I graded the students' ebooks that were uploaded on Indie. I did tell them that, just to get an outcome, because students always work with grades, right? So I always tell them, I told this group of students, if you want to have good grades, you have to work very hard, because your assignment will not only be assessed, but it will be uploaded on Indie at USM. So they took that as a challenge and they strove very hard towards um, that outcome. Okay, so those are the two types of assessment. So I'm sharing with you the course information of the course that I did with them. It is on effective writing for TESOL. So there were two of us, myself and Dr. Sama. Actually, there were 62 students, not 72. And actually, the course is basically to enhance the students' writing skill. They are going to be teachers, English teachers, so they need to know the right way to write, right? So that is the main objective of this course. And so this sharing session will take a look at CLO3 that I did, which is demonstrate an understanding of the good features of writing in a story, right? So they're supposed to write a story. And the assignment is 40%, so that's quite a big bulk for them. Okay. This was the assignment given to them, and it was a group work. So depending, the group work consisted of 6 to 8 students, right? But the majority had only 6 students, and the marks was gearing towards 40%. This coursework, this course is entirely coursework based, so there was no exam at the end. Okay, so the question was to produce an ebook of a detective story for teenagers between 13 to 15 years old. Okay, I wanted them to produce a storybook on detective story because I wanted them to try the uncharted waters in which most of our students do not know how to write a detective story. They could write any other genre but detective story. And that is so true because most of my students, I think they never had a chance to write a detective story. They read, yes, they watch detective stories, so they know they have the knowledge, but they've never written a detective story. So I figured that to assess students, try to go beyond what they already know, because I know that the principle of teaching, you need to teach your students based on what they are familiar with, but it's also important for us to try and assess, to push them, to challenge them to something that they are not familiar with, so that you can see them progress the development of the students. So if you do something on narrative story or on argumentative story, which they are so familiar with when they were in school, so that's no point. So that's why I chose this genre, detective story. And so the condition, the story should contain at least 3 chapters because it's a group work. So therefore, uh, each pair can produce 1 chapter, and each chapter should be written in 1,200 to 1,500 words, right? And I did give them some conditions as well because it's a detective story, so they should have the suspense element and also the plot twist. And because we are training teachers to be, or teacher trainees, I want my students to be able to educate the community or the society. So there must be an education, something that the readers can learn from their story. Inject a little bit of humor because storybooks, serious storybooks will not sell, so inject some humor. And I emphasize on happy ending. I want to change the my intention was to change the mindset of today's world. Whenever you turn on the television, it's always about guns, it's always about villains, it's always about uh, very dark world. So I want them to turn that around and teach the society and have a happy ending. All right, have a happy ending. And of course, they needed to use suitable language in their storybook. And because of this condition, so I had this mission statement given to them that this project is going to be something that they can educate the teenagers, okay? Because this book was targeted for teenagers. So teenagers with profound moral values, right? Therefore, no aggression, no prejudice, no perversion will be involved in the creation of the detective story. No aggression here, meaning if you were to read the storybooks nowadays on detective stories or you watch on TV, it's always about murder, it's always about blood, it's always about guns. So I don't want them to do that kind of detective story. I ask them to do something subtle, okay, and it cannot involve any of those elements. It was quite challenging because they are exposed, they are in this kind of world, right, in this era where everything is uh, how would I say, it's everything on destruction. So I don't want that, I don't want my students to do that. And of course, prejudice is out of the question. And perversion here, I don't want anything funny, anything awkward. So that's why I stress no perversion, no gay, no homosexual, nothing of that sort. Okay, so they knew that what they had to do. So every time I see blood, I say, hey, look, there's blood in your story. Then they had to rethink again. So it was quite challenging for them because it's something that they're not used to, right? The conditions are very strict, but I did give them some, of course, I did give them some space for them to write their story, but I just had to make sure of all these conditions. Okay, so the whole process actually took 6 weeks. Yeah, 6 weeks. So 2 weeks lecture and 1 week a tutorial. It's the after the mid-sem break, that was when I started doing this storybook writing. Plus minus 6 weeks. All right. So I'm going to just zoom in and talk about the assessment. But before the assessment, I would also like to share something about my lecture. So my lecture tend to be very structured. because everything was done online, we were still doing online classes last semester. So I had no choice but to use all the gadgets. I use WhatsApp, I use Excel, Google Drive, right? And I use everything online. So first of all, to give the input of the lecture, I had video clips ready for them to show them the learning objective for the day. And this video clip was actually, or the video clips were actually from my micro-credential videos. So I used those videos in my lessons, and those videos are just between 5 to 10 minutes video. You know, kids nowadays, they don't like to watch long videos. In fact, the shorter, the better, right? The shorter videos, the better. But I could not make it any shorter than 10 minutes. Okay. Then after the input from the video, they watch by themselves. All right. So I gave them time to watch. And after that, we discuss on the topic. This is for the reinforcement of learning. So we discuss the topic on WhatsApp, right? And I'm a task-based person. I usually have a task at the end of my lecture to ensure that they sustain, or they can apply the knowledge, or they can go beyond what have been lectured, or beyond the input that I have given. Okay, if I may show you the examples. Um, if you want to see, Cik Razan, can I show them my video clip?
Boleh? Can?
Okay. So please tell me whether you can hear the sound or not, yeah?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and
Can
good
you hear?
day.
The
I
sound is
hope that
clear.
you are all geared up
Okay.
for the second lesson. For this
Yeah.
session, we are going to learn how to begin your detective story, how to introduce your story. So let's begin. This topic has one objective to achieve, and that is to identify 4 types of introduction. Now, how do you begin a detective story, and why is it important for you to begin correctly? How you write the opening of your story is the deciding factor in whether your work will end up in somebody's bookshelf. Hence, you need to begin your story interestingly that would capture the reader's attention. One way of doing that is by writing a good introduction. Otherwise, the editors or the agents will not publish your work. When they don't publish your work, readers can't read your work. There are 4 types of introduction that will be covered in this lesson. The first one is jumping straight into the action. The second, the hero action beginning. The third, in the middle of things. And the fourth, the flashback. Now let's take a look at each type of introduction. The first type of introduction is jumping right into the action. Jumping directly into the action in the first scene is a great approach to put the reader right in the center of the story. This will trigger the reader's excitement right from the very beginning. The action could be a brawl between 2 persons or a car chase, like in this example that we're going to see. The police cars went after the suspects in a wild chase. Suddenly, everything was quiet, as if they were transported into an unknown world. "Where are we?" asked Captain Till, breaking the eerie silence. As illustrated in the story, the beginning of this story brings the readers to the action scene, that is the police chase. Then the writer continues to amaze the readers with a mystery. To have this kind of introduction would spark the reader's adrenaline rush right away. Do you agree? The second type of introduction is the hero action beginning. In this introduction, the hero is on stage, occupied in active and appealing activities, perhaps saving a life or curbing an accident. And this activity is related to the initiation or the start of the central story. Let's take a look at the example to better understand what the hero action beginning is all about. Without a second thought, Mr. Sam dived into the river to save the drowning boy. Spectators were already assembled at the scene when Mr. Sam dragged the boy to safety. Drenched and still gasping for his breath, Mr. Sam murmured, "Who is this boy?" As he gazed at the crowd, Mr. Sam saw a suspicious figure. When he stood up to get a better look, the figure scampered off. The boy's coughing redirected Mr. Sam's focus. In this example, Mr. Sam, who obviously is the hero or the detective, is brought to the central focus in the introduction, where he saved a drowning boy. This is where the story began. What do you think about this introduction? Do you like it?
Okay, so that's an example of the video, a video clip that I had, or I showed to my students for the 6 weeks.
This is another.
Okay, so this is the part where we discussed to reinforce the learning, right? I discussed it on WhatsApp. I gave questions like, you watch the video and then you tell me which one you like best. And normally this will trigger the students' analysis ability, where after watching, they will choose, and some of them would say that would justify why they chose 1 and not 4, why they chose 2 and not 3, that kind of thing. So it keeps the class active. I feel that WhatsApp is a very good platform where you have an active learning. I couldn't hold my classes on Webex because normally it will be a dead class, nobody, and you cannot see anyone on the platform. So it's very frustrating. But WhatsApp gives me a new platform. Even though there are cons on WhatsApp, but I do get active discussions. All right. So it means that they are learning from the input. They can choose which introduction that they like. Then my third part of lecture would be to perform a task. So I gave them 4 introductions, but I don't want them to just know about 4 introductions. There's so many types of introductions. So what I did was I asked them to work in groups, all right? They had to go and Google for 2 other types. So there were 62 of them. So they know their own groups, they form their own WhatsApp group, and they search for 2 other types of introduction. Okay, so in my class, they cannot sleep in my class. It's always ongoing things that I ask them to do. All right, after the introduction must be suitable for to be used in detective stories. All right. So after they have searched for it, they're supposed to provide the meaning of the introduction or which type of introduction, and they're supposed to provide an example for each of the introductions. So this is quite easy for them, knowing that these students are very computer savvy, internet savvy, so you have no problem in asking them to copy and paste. Okay, and they're supposed to post it on Padlet. My classes are usually on Padlet. Everything is on my Padlet, so they paste it there. I find that Padlet is also another good platform where students can always come back to view whatever they need to relook or reread or whatever. All right, it's a good learning platform. Okay, now we come to the assessment part. This is the tutorial that I did with them. And this is where I did my assessment for learning. I just need to put a disclaimer here. This was a writing exercise. It's a storybook writing. But tutorial only has 1 hour per week, so it's not enough. Therefore, the students had to do all the writings outside of class time, and they had to find time to complete, because every week I gave them different tasks. So they need to complete those tasks. And it's a wild chase, chasing them for the task to be uploaded. All right. So the group members discuss and perform the writing task. And usually this one is outside. And after they have done so for instance, the introduction, the write-up of the task is posted on an Excel sheet shared with the class. Everyone can see. It's a Google Drive thing. So they can see whoever wrote. The reason for me doing that, it's a collaborative effort. They learn from each other, right? They can have a look at other people's way of writing, then perhaps they can learn something, and not to copy. So they could think of another style. So, it's a good way for this assessment for learning to go to that hike. And then when they have posted in the Excel sheet, so what I did was I assigned groups. So meaning, let's say there are 3 books for one tutorial group. There were, I think, 3 groups. One book has 3 chapters. So meaning, okay, whatever, or I've forgotten already, sorry. I assigned a group. So let's say if they belong in book 1, so book 1 will give feedback to group 2, and then group 2 to group 3. So they rotate, right, so that they can give constructive feedback to not just one particular group, but they can exchange. So they exchange ideas. So this is what I love about assessment for learning. This is what I love about the process, the whole process. And not only that, I did do some chasing when they don't do their work, but in this Excel thing, I give them the feedback. Feedback is on the WhatsApp, the individual group WhatsApp. So I also provided constructive feedback. And normally during this process, I tell them to do their own grammatical errors, correct their grammatical errors using Grammarly, because my intention was to just focus on the content first, on the cohesion, anything about the writing bit, not the grammar bit. Okay. So the peers are allowed to give content, are allowed to give language feedback. I have some restrictions, but I also have freedom for the students to do. Okay, after the feedback session, this all happens in the tutorial. The authors will revise the write-up, and they need not revise it then, because this is, like I said, 1 hour session. The feedback happens during the tutorial. The revision could happen during the tutorial. It could happen after the tutorial, right? But I did give my students to decide by themselves. If they feel that the feedback is suitable, they can take the feedback. If they think that the feedback is not suitable, they can just ignore the feedback, because it's their work, it's their story, all right? If people meddle too much with the story, then it will not be their story anymore. So they have that freedom. I allow that freedom. Then this 2 bit here is actually towards the end, right? The end of the book production. I will talk more about this later on. Okay, sorry. So this is where I gave another round of feedback, because it's continuous, right? Continuous for the 6 weeks. And then this part is towards the last part. And that's where I give them the grades already, and then I also corrected their mistakes, their errors, basically. And so this time they need to revise because it's on grammar. Usually it's on grammar, so they have no choice because they want to publish. So you wouldn't want them to publish something that is erroneous, something that's full of errors. So yeah, this is what went on. All right, so for the assessment for learning during this whole process for the 6 weeks, it's really intensive, right? And it's really challenging for the students, that they're not just taking your course, they're taking so many other courses, but somehow my students pull through with this kind of group learning or collaborative learning in producing their ebook. All right. Then, is my pace okay? Am I going too fast?
I think it's okay.
All right. All right. Then, okay. So I'm going to show you the students' write-up on the introduction. This is the worksheet that I mentioned, right? The worksheet that I mentioned. So in this particular tutorial group, I have a few books here. So we're going to talk about ebook 1. Ebook 1 has 3 chapters. So this is what I mentioned to you. Chapter 1 written by 2 people. Chapter 2 by another 2, and also chapter 3, I think, by another 2 more students, right? So this is the part where they actually wrote their piece. They write somewhere else and they copy and paste. And the process of all this took 6 weeks. Actually, this is just a one-page show. I should have asked them to perhaps provide these few columns to show the progress. So maybe perhaps next time for first draft, they put here, second draft here, third draft here, so that the students can see the progress. And this would somehow boost their spirit, boost their motivation, seeing how much they have improved, right? If just by having one page show, they couldn't see and they probably could not remember what they have done before this. But by having a few columns, a few drafts, they probably could see things better. So this was the introduction. This was the introduction by chapter 1, chapter 2, and this was the introduction for chapter 3. Okay, writing a storybook with 3 chapters is not easy because it's a group effort. They need to ensure that the style of writing is similar in each chapter. They can have different types of introduction, but the style of writing, whether to have this way, all right, or to have this way, okay, they need to standardize it. So that was another challenge for them. Okay, if you have any questions, can you just interact with me orally? Because it's quite difficult for me to read while I'm presenting.
There's a question from Linda Lee.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. So is the writing style only story type? Is there any requirements about the number of words?
Oh, I've already mentioned it just now. Yeah, there's a requirement for the number of words. Yes. For this particular assignment, they had to do on a detective story. Okay, so I hope I've answered the question. All right, then here's another ebook. All right, this is a very short introduction, which also had 3 chapters. Okay. Yeah, okay, and this is the 3rd storybook. Okay, so this is a different way of writing. And yeah, all right. How do I go back? I think I'll stop sharing first. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So that's the student's introduction, one example from the input that I gave on introduction. And this is where the students will give the feedback, so the peer feedback. So the feedback normally will be very positive. Students, they like to give positive feedback, which is good. I encourage them to do so. But at the same time, they also need to look at what their friends could improve on. All right. So I always encourage them that. And if you look at the feedback given by the students, they not only pick on the ones that they like, but they justify. Okay, I like the creativity and the details in this story. It really brings out curiosity for readers to keep reading and find out what's going to happen next. The scene portrayed shown a great start for your story, and the arrangement of your introduction is similar to a standard novel. Kudos. So the authors, whoever wrote that story, will feel very, very enlightened, right? They'll be very happy with this kind of feedback. And for this chapter 2, another 2 authors, excellent introduction. I love how you blend in the element of the scene with a great monologue. It's a different style of writing. Then plus the introduction shows you got a great storyline to come up. Looking forward to it, all right? And for this one, also they justify, love the melody of the birds chirping. It brings a visual of sound for readers to imagine and be in the story. That means it transcends you into the story. But over here it says, but maybe the introduction is too short. Okay, so something for the authors to think about. So by having a positive feedback is good, but sometimes you think that you don't need to correct them, but it's good to boost your motivation. It's good to enhance that motivation level. But by having things like, the introduction is too short, something that they should think about and something that they can improve on. So I always encourage for the students to not only give the positive side, don't worry about giving, pointing out what your friends can improve on. Okay, so they are used to my style. Then after that, they give more critical feedback. So this is an example of what kind of feedback that I gave. Like I mentioned, during the whole process, I focus more on the content. Like I gave them on, the logic, right? The logic. And also I looked at the title and sometimes look at the sequence of events. Sometimes you miss that and you need an outside person to look at your work and comment on it. And this one I want to talk about a bit. It's a bit awkward. It was a story about 2 detectives in a school, right? School, the students became detectives and caught the thieves who stole something in the school. And what was not logical was the investigators, right, the detectives actually called the police to come and fetch the thieves from the school. So I told them, it doesn't happen here in Malaysia, okay? You don't have the authority to do that. So I told them, what you can do is, okay, you can can report those thieves to the headmaster and let the headmaster, the authority, deal with it. So sometimes they go out of context, sometimes they go like, okay, it's a story, never mind, I can do it this way. But you have to bring them to the logic of being in a setting, a classroom or a school setting, Malaysian school setting. All right, so this is the assessment for learning. It's rather to improve the student's ability. So when I see something is not right, when the peers see something is not right, we try to correct each other. It's a co-production, right? So they co-produce their stories. Okay. All right, now I shall move on to this. Okay, assessment of learning, as I have mentioned just now, this is solely on the ebook. All right, solely on the ebook. After they have completed the story, okay, I will also before they pass up or they submit, okay, I also gave them some input on how to write a good cover page and how to do publishing logo for your self-imprint. Because I learned that if you self-publish, it would be good to have a publishing logo of your own, because it's like you have your own, it's like your own company. You self-publish it, so you're the owner, so you should have a publishing logo. So I also taught my students to do that. If I can share. Okay, this is my Padlet actually. Okay, so this is how they can produce good cover page, right? What you need to know. So I told them it has to tell about the story. It's got to be something unique, and it's got to represent the genre. And because that is detective story, so the cover has to tell, once the readers look at the cover page, they know that it's going to be something on investigation. Okay, and then I told them to analyze this story and following these tips, and they had to analyze some cover pages. So from this description, does it represent, does the cover page represent this description? Okay, and then this one too. All right, so they read this and then they say, then they will discuss and they say, this one, yeah, they suit because so and so and so. So it's always thinking, okay. And then I told them about what should it contain, okay? The title and the author's name, they have to be attractive. And the picture or the image has got to have some mood, okay? Like this one over here, all right? When you see this cover page, you'll be enticed to buy one. All right, then the typography or the fonts, you have to learn something on the font, the size, the type of font that you should use for cover page. These are all tips to attract the reader's attention. Okay, then okay, this one is digitalizing your drawings. I actually encourage my students to draw by themselves to illustrate the cover page, because then it will be very authentic and very, the copyright belongs to them. But nobody picked on that. I mean, I suppose they were too busy. So most of them took from Freepik. But I also had this section where I provided them some websites for them to, how can they digitalize their drawing. But knowing that these kids, they are very internet savvy, so this did not really help them. They are so much advanced. Okay, then yeah, this is the publishing logo or creating your imprint. So these are some tips. It has to be simple, unique, and matches your purpose again. And these are some samples that I took from the internet. This one is my own logo publishing, because I self-publish my books. So this is a drawing of me on a swing, and then my pen name, all right? And these are some logos that I took online. So then, yeah, okay. So this is, by the way, my entire Padlet, all right? This one, yeah, the thing began, yeah, from week 9, yeah, from here, so until the end. Right, so I had my tutorials, I had my, yeah, the whole thing here. Okay. And now I don't know how to go back again. Sorry. Okay. All right. So after the cover page and the content page, everything, the layout is correct, right? Then then I gave them, this is when I gave them the final grade for their book, right? For their book. I gave them the final grade. But then after that, they are going to publish the book on eLearn on a platform where everybody can see, right? So if they were just to publish on the eLearn platform, that will just be for us. So no one else will see it. But if they go online, if they sell it, then, you have an audience, all right? So I gave them another final feedback that I was talking about just now, before publishing, to establish the quality. Okay, so this is the feedback. This is my final feedback where I wrote the errors and I corrected the errors for them because I didn't want them to publish something that is erroneous, full of errors. Okay. When they see this, they get a bit, heart-wrenching, but they managed to overcome their emotion. Then they did correct. So finally, this is the product or the products. 62 students. I was in charge of 2 tutorial groups, and Dr. Sama was in charge for another group. So altogether, we had 9 ebooks. 9 ebooks. Yeah, all about detective stories. So it's under this genre on indie at USM. They are very good stories. We can learn things from them. Of course, they are just novice writers, but I'm just so proud that they managed to come to this stage. All right. Yeah, so I just want to share about my CEO attainment, not to be proud of, but I just want to show you the difference. Okay, so just now it's for CLO 3, all right? So this is where we have the assessment for learning and assessment of learning, where I have the feedback, the peer feedback, and also the teacher feedback. Okay, so the average was 91%. Excuse me, as opposed to CLO1 and CLO2. This is just assessment of learning, and CLO2 as well, of learning. So the average is so much lower than the for learning and off learning. So when you have for learning, your students become more enhanced. So I think this really promotes the Vygotsky's ZPD, where, when they can go, actually they can go so much higher than that. Yeah, but it's all highly attained. All right, so at the end of the course, of course, you want your students to reflect. I always do this. And at the beginning, they were not really into it. Then I said, come on, give me some reflections. And you'll be surprised at what they can write about your course. Sometimes it can, sort of demotivate you, but I'm just showing you the positive ones. Okay, so from the start until the end in the process of writing and finally finishing this ebook, I enjoyed every single moment. I believe our lecturers should let this assignment continue because I have seen some of our classmates work, and if teaching is not working out for them, it means they won't be teachers, then they could become authors, right? And then this is about us. Receiving guidance from our lecturers certainly helped us in getting better production quality for this book. Thank you, Dr. Rohaya, for always correcting our mistakes and giving us feedback on what we should fix. This is the thing. It gets frustrating from time to time because sometimes we hit rock bottom and do not know how to fix the mistake. Nevertheless, as an author, we need to figure out our errors, and try our best to fix it. You see, you play with emotions, right? When you give feedback, when you receive feedback, you play with emotions. So they often, even if I get feedback, I can sink to rock bottom as well. But you need to stand up, and it's for your self-improvement. So Alhamdulillah, they took it in. All right, and this one is another one. And this person said criticism. Okay, I wouldn't call it criticism. It's constructive feedback. Come on. All right, and they said quite helpful. After hearing what our classmates had to say about our chapter, my partner and I decided to make a few changes. Okay. This is the motivation. It spurs me on to perform even better. And this one is about my video, okay? And the brainstorming phase and difficulties in coming up with a plot will always be remembered. I like that the chapter we specifically wrote about bullying, okay? Which is something we can relate to in our daily life. So this person reflects beyond, right? It has always been an ongoing issue in today's life, and I was hoping that by writing this chapter about teen bullying, I could somehow convey my message that it is okay to speak up. It is okay to say no to things we aren't always ready for, and it is okay to be yourself. I'm getting goosebumps. All right. And along with finishing it, I was able to learn a great deal of useful information. I truly believe that this assignment will always be treasured and fantastic learning experience for me. I think they are honest, okay? I hope they are honest. But I'm a qualitative person, inshallah, they are honest. Okay, this is my reflection. Actually, this was my second attempt. The first attempt was with another cohort, but it failed. I failed to uh, ask them to upload and sell it on in Indie at USM because of the quality of the work. Okay, so in the end, it just ended up in my e-learning platform for grades purposes. It was just too much for me to correct. It was just too much, and at that time, we had 83 students. So can you imagine? All right. So I just had to stop it. I encouraged them to work on their errors, but finally the students gave up and just stopped there. But this one was successful, alhamdulillah. I am really, really thankful. The achievement was not without sweat and tears. Okay, just kidding. So during the 6 weeks plus minus, I battled with the students' rhetorical decisions, the essay, the performance, their language abilities, and of course their emotions, right? And on top all is their laid-back attitudes. We have passengers. We have people who do not want to write. We have people who do not want to collaborate. So yeah, that's the cherry on top of the cake. Honestly, it was very, very exhausting, but I kept my head high in the sky, believing in my students' abilities and that this project would come to fruition. So it finally did, alhamdulillah, and my praise is to my Almighty Allah once again. Okay, the last bit here is the lesson learned. Okay, assessment for learning was grueling, as I've mentioned just now. But assessment of learning in producing and in publishing it on Indie at USM was even more challenging. As the finished product is just not for grading, it's not just for me to grade, but it is to be published. So therefore, quality cannot be compromised at all. All right, so it was a learning experience for me, but it was a good, really, experience. I think, yeah, I finished my sharing session. Thank you. Cik Razan, back over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rohaya. So if anyone else have any questions that you would like to ask, one final question? So if not, maybe I think maybe you can share some tips about, because what you're doing is creative writing in essence. So I don't think there's much there's not much consideration in terms of how you plan to 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 do the ebook. But how can you advise those who are in the, maybe they want to produce a non-fiction ebooks, like those in the pure science or the science streams? Because sometimes if you just ask them to do ebooks, so it just be a collection of reports and that's it lah. So maybe some tips for them.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, I have produced some content-based books, but in terms, I did it in narrative writing, meaning stories, children's stories, as I am a children's story book teller or writer. So that was actually I wrote 2 books on science. The first one was on something to do with the ice,
Guessing
compound
colors.
ice.
Yeah.
That one, yes. And I did another one on compound ice. Oh, yeah, that one is, that's the book, Teacher Raza, I forgot. Okay, so that one was content-based on science. So you can also do something on science but do it in a form of a story. Many people have attempted on it, and I think you can also do it. And I've also done on another one, a storybook, Mr. Mudball. So that one was also on science on Mudball, okay? And then, and I've also helped some students for RCE to produce SDG books. That is also for science, but they told the science concepts in a form of a story. Because I'm a language person, so I don't really, I read reports, I read the articles, but we have to reach out to the other types of audience. I think stories will do good in that. Okay.
So I've shared the 2 books here. So maybe if anyone is interested, you can just look at it. So
Oh,
if there's,
okay. Creating audiovisual. That one is to digitalize your storybook. Yeah. Okay. I guess there are no other questions. Thank you, Dr. Linda. Yeah. Okay.
if there's no more questions, I think that's it for our webinar today.
Yeah.
And we thank Dr. Rahia for her very, very informative presentation just now, and we hope to see you again in the future.
Okay, inshallah. I thank you very much for your support. This is just a sharing session, and I hope that you have all benefited from it. Thank you. Assalamualaikum. Take
So,
care.
so please find you guys can scan for the attendance. You can scan the QR code here using Passport USM, or you can enter the link, as well as do the survey for the CPD points.
Okay, Encik Razan, can I leave now?
Yes, sure, can. Thank you, Dr. Rahia.
Okay, bye. Assalamualaikum.
Salam. We are doing this live on YouTube as well, so we will share the link to this webinar on our page later, on Facebook page CDE at USM.